Hello and welcome back once again to After the Credits. So today we're talking about Smurfs The Lost Village. Yes, I actually went and saw Smurfs The Lost Village. I've seen the other two, why not watch this one? So, what did I think of Smurfs The Lost Village? Well, I was a little confused when I first saw this popping up in the theater because I vaguely remember seeing a Smurfs The Lost Village direct to DVD not too long ago. I think it was shortly after Smurfs 2 went out on DVD. A few months later there was a direct to DVD sequel or like continuation of other storyline, and I believe that one was called Smurfs the Lost Village, but I'll have to look it up to be sure. I'll probably pop it up here if I can find it. Not 100% sure on what the title of that one was, but I could have swore it was The Lost Village. So when this popped up in movie theaters, I was like, why are they putting that in theaters now, years later? I mean, at least a year later, maybe two, instead of doing it back when you first put it out on DVD. So I went and watched it anyway because I watched the other two, so why not, right? Basically, this one has nothing to do with the other two, other than maybe some of the same voice actors and the same CG animation. But most of the new characters that were introduced are kind of gone from this one. You don't have the two baddies that became good at the end of the last one. You don't have Tuffy Smurf or whatever, the Scottish one that I hated, who was made up solely for the first movie. Yeah, all those guys are kind of gone, although Papa Smurf does introduce a lot of additional Smurfs that don't exist anywhere in canon. They are not part of the original 101 that were created by P.O. however many years ago. They didn't appear in the original animated series. They didn't appear in any of the movies. I think some were just made up to kind of emphasize the point of the movie. And the point of the movie was each Smurf has a purpose, which is where they get their name. They have a role. Like Clumsy is clumsy, Hefty is hefty. You know, he's the tough guy. Brainy is kind of smart to the point of being somewhat stupid. Handy is the builder. He's the handyman. Papa obviously is the father figure, and so on. But then we come to Smurfette, who, because she's not a natural-born Smurf, because for some reason all Smurfs are born male, so Smurfette not being a natural Smurf, she doesn't really have a purpose, so to speak, other than being a Smurfette. What is an et? Basically, the movie is Smurfette having an identity crisis, not knowing who she is, not knowing what her purpose is, being alone as the only girl Smurf, even though I believe P.O.'s original comic strip had a Mama Smurf and even a Grandma Smurf at one point. As far as the television series, the animated series goes, they did eventually introduce Sassette, who was another, again, not naturally born Smurf. She was another creation of Gargamel's, just like Smurfette was. And then, of course, in the Smurfs 2 feature film, again, Gargamel created another female Smurf. So basically, all three of the known visual Smurfs were all created by Gargamel, other than P.O.'s original creations of, I believe, Mama and Grandma Smurf, who I believe exist. If they exist, I'll pop them up here because there's probably pictures of them somewhere. But anyway, so Smurfette's having this issue where she's not able to figure out who she is or what her purpose is. So for some reason, which I can't really remember because, again, it's been a couple weeks since I've seen this because I've been having some issues where I had to stop doing videos for a little while. For some reason, she seeks out Gargamel to first, I forget what it was. She wanted an answer from her. She went to his house to try and like figure out the purpose of her origin, or I forget what the hell the story was. But of course, Gargamel is still trying to capture the Smurfs, and some of the Smurfs go to try to rescue Smurfette because they think she's in danger from Gargamel. Over the course of them running away from Gargamel, they find, well, Smurfette sees another Smurf hiding in a bush. And when she tries to chase after that Smurf, they disappear behind this wall, which goes into the Forbidden Forest. And she's like, wait, there's other Smurfs in the Forbidden Forest. So then Gargamel uses a magic spell to try to figure out where this lost village of Smurfs is in the Forbidden Forest. And it gives him a clue of where they're trying to go, which then Smurfette and the other Smurfs say, well, we informed Gargamel that these other Smurfs existed, so we need to warn them that he's coming, that we can't just leave them to where they don't know what's about to happen. So they go and seek out this other village of Smurfs, which eventually they find because they're the Smurfs and they're able to find other Smurf villages for some reason, even though they didn't know any others existed. They do make a nice mention to other characters in the Smurfs franchise because they say, well, we don't know what these other Smurfs are going to look like. They might not even be blue. And one of them makes a joke about them being orange, and that dates back to other characters in the Smurfs. I believe were called the Swoofs or the Sweefs. I don't remember exactly what the pronunciation of the name is. I'll pop it up here on screen if I can find it. I'm going to have to do a lot of background research for this video. So there's a nice little nod towards that. Again, kind of writing off the existence of those things, even though they did exist in canon. But they kind of make that joke. So eventually they find this village, and it turns out it's an entire village of female Smurfs. Smurfette's kind of like, oh, hey, there's other female Smurfs. I'm not alone. So then Smurfette's kind of like this whole, well, what's my purpose thing? And they're like, what do you mean, what's your purpose? We can be anything we want. You know, we're Smurfs. So it's kind of like this whole female empowerment thing, like, oh, female Smurfs aren't stuck to a label. They can do whatever. You know, it's like, you got the one that's kind of the warrior. You got the one that's like the cutesy one. You got basically all the female stereotype tropes of characters are all there, but they're not named after anything. Like most of them are named after flowers. There's like Smurf Willow or names like that. It was like Smurf and then whatever. So Smurfette is just Smurfette, whatever an et is. So then Papa Smurf comes to try to rescue the Smurfs, and it's right around the time that Gargamel shows up as well. So then the two bands of Smurfs have to get together because the female Smurfs don't really trust the male Smurfs, even though Smurfette is kind of there. And Brainy kind of lets it slip that Smurfette isn't a real Smurf. She was created by Gargamel. So then the female Smurfs kind of don't trust her, and they're like, well, you were created just to find us and trick us, not realizing that Smurfette has been around for years and is already, you know, if that was her plan, she would have already gave away the male Smurf's location to Gargamel. But the female Smurfs are kind of untrusting. They're kind of like a warrior woman tribe, kind of like an Amazon tribe type of thing. And the only one really trusting is the mother figure, Mama, basically a Mama Smurf, but I forget her. I think she was Smurf Willow. I don't remember. But anyway, so Papa Smurf has to kind of talk to Smurf Willow, and I'm just going to call Willow now because Smurf Willow sounds kind of silly. So Papa talks to Willow and kind of like goes more into depth about what happened and how, you know, you can trust us. They eventually band together and stop Gargamel, but it ends up being Smurfette who does the ultimate sacrifice and puts her life on the line to protect the other Smurfs, and basically the female Smurfs, and that's what creates their trust for her finally. But in doing so, it turns her back into the lump of clay that she originally was that Gargamel created her from. So they're all sad, like, oh, Smurfette did the ultimate sacrifice, you know, it's never going to be the same without her. So they take her back to the main Smurf village. So all the female Smurfs leave their village unattended and go to the male Smurf village to kind of see, like, okay, you know, this is how we live, you know, we're not bad people, you know, let's all come together as a family now. And they're basically having a funeral service for Smurfette, and all of the love of all of the male Smurfs and female Smurfs crying out for her forms this type of magic that brings her back to life. So then, hey, Smurfette's alive again, she's not really dead, so let's have a party. And now all the male and female Smurfs are mingling together. Smurfette's back. She knows that she doesn't have to have a specific purpose. She can be whatever she wants, whenever she wants. And basically wrap up happy ending. Again, sorry for the spoilers, but most of you probably aren't going to watch it anyway. You're just watching it to see what my opinion of it was. So speaking of my opinion, what was my opinion on it? What would I give it as far as a star rating? Probably a 2.5. It wasn't horrible. At least they stuck to Smurf Village this time. It was still heavily CG, but that was okay because it's existing in the Smurf world. This is probably what the first movie really should have been. Instead of going into the real world and all that, is introduce the Smurfs, have this story, have a story that takes place in the Smurf world, and kind of left it at that, but instead the movies decided to take it into the real world not once but twice. Where this one, you stick it in the fantasy world. So for that, it's a better movie, but overall, they undo a lot of the lore, not only of the two movies that came before it, but also the original animated series and all the original comics and narration done by the original creator. And it was just kind of a predictable story. Like, even before I knew that they found a tribe of female Smurfs, when I found out that the story was heavily focused on Smurfette and who she was, and like, okay, well, if they find this other village, it's clearly going to be all female Smurfs. So Smurfette will find her place there, but she'll still come back to the male village because she's the Smurfette. So I kind of already knew where it was going to go, so obviously it's targeted at children. It's not a real thinker of a movie. It's meant to fill in a story and, you know, pull at your heartstrings, make you cry for Smurfette when there's really no need. It kind of has a positive message about female empowerment, but again, like once they got to that point, they just kind of dropped that whole subplot. It's like, hey, we're the female Smurfs and we're whatever, and then it's just like, oh, Gargamel's here. Let's just forget that whole women's empowerment thing and just focus on the story again. And it's like, well, what was the point of building it all up if you're not going to follow through on it? But again, it's a kids movie. It's just meant to tell little girls, hey, you can be whatever you want, even if you're a Smurfette and you grow up in like a community of boys. You can still be whoever. In the meantime, watch out for the creepy old man with the cat. Yeah, undoing a lot of the established lore and kind of dropping the positive message at the climax of the movie when it probably should have been most important. It loses a bit for that. Other than that, it's kind of an average middle-of-the-road movie. It's not really great, not really horrible. It's somewhat Smurfy. So yeah, normally I would have gave it a 3, but because of those couple glaring issues with me, I knocked it down to 2.5. So that's basically it for this episode. I really didn't think I was going to talk about this film that long, but I did. So as always, thank you guys for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share the video. Links are down in the description. Click the bell up there in the corner. Make sure you're getting notifications every time I post new content. And until next time, I'll see you after the credits.